Hey, so we're back with another video for gRPC calls, and in this one I'm going to go over server-side streaming. So just to show what server-side streaming looks like in a visual, I have this diagram. So we have our Go client, which will send a message to the Go server, and then the server will then go ahead and send messages back through a stream. Now we did the unary one in the previous video, and with that one, once the messages have been sent back to the client, that connection is closed. But with gRPC server-side streaming, the server can continue to send messages to the client until it's done processing, or there may be an error on the server side, or maybe the client decides to close the stream. So that's one of the benefits of server-side streaming, is just having that open line of communication between the client and the server. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and get into the code. The first thing that I want to do is update our proto file. So our proto file, we're going to add in another RPC function, and I've already defined it over here. It's called broadcast letter. So our broadcast letter is going to take in a data type called letter message, and it's going to return a broadcast data type through the stream. So let me go ahead and grab those definitions that I had defined earlier and put those over here. So the letter message is going to have sender, which is of string type, and it's going to have message, which is of string type as well. So that's going to be passed in here as the request. And then for the broadcast, which is going to be sent back through the stream, that's going to have an ID. It's going to have a sender, which is going to be the same as what we've passed in from our letter message, but we'll show that later on in the implementation. But it's going to have a sender, a subscriber, and a message that's going to be sent back to all of the people that have subscribed. So the proto file definition is good. The next thing we want to do is just go ahead and create the Go files that are used to act as like a bridge between gRPC and Go. So I need to go ahead and cd into my email messages directory, which is over here, you can see, and that's where I have my proto file defined. Or run the proto-c file, or proto-c command. And then now you can see the gRPC files have been updated. So now it's going to contain an interface for broadcast letter. And we need to go ahead and implement this interface in another file. So I'm going to go over to server.go, which is where I'm holding all my implementations. And I already have that defined, so I'm just going to go ahead and grab it from over here. All right, so it's going to have a function receiver called email message server, and it's called broadcast letter, and that you need to make sure is always the same as what's inside the interface, because if you don't, it's going to later on say that the broadcast letter function is not implemented or unimplemented. So in this, it's asking for a context, but I'm not going to pass that in. But the next thing that it's asking for is a letter message object. So you can see I'm passing in a letter message object, and I've named it letter. And then the other thing that's being passed in as a parameter is one of the gRPC call options called, which is a stream object. So we're passing in the stream, and then it's going to return an error as defined here. So inside of our function definition, you can see that we're generating an ID, and we have a list of recipients, and then we're going through that list of recipients and creating broadcast structs. So we're creating a broadcast struct with the ID that's created, and I just noticed that this broadcast ID is going to be the same for each one, but I kind of want to make it different for each one that's submitted, so we'll just define that here. So each iteration will create a new ID. And then it's going to go ahead and pass in the sender name, which we're retrieving from the letter message object that was passed in through the request. And then after that, we're going and taking that recipient that we're currently at within the for loop and putting it in as our subscriber. And then the next thing that we do is take in the message that was passed in from the request in the letter message object. And then once we have the broadcast struct composed, then we go ahead and pass it into the send function for the stream, and that will send it right back to the client. And then once that function is done, it'll just go ahead and or not function, once that for loop is done, it'll just go back and return nil as an error. So our method has been defined, and now we can cd back to our parent and just run go. So go run main.go. Good, so you can see the server is up and it's registered successfully. And now we can go over to Postman, and I'm just going to clear this out for my last test. And now you can see that I already have my definition set up. I went ahead and selected the broadcast letter RPC, and then I went ahead and defined my sender as Nick Fury, and then my message as help is needed. And again, I knew that these fields, in particular the name and the type, because of how I defined it in my proto file over here, you can see the similarity between the two, sender message, and both are string. So let's go ahead and invoke this. And you can see here the request that was sent, and then now you can see the response that was received at the client side. And there's 3 of them because I went through 3 different recipients in this string slice. So coming back over to Postman, I'll just dig deep into one of them, and you can see the broadcast ID that was generated. You can also see the sender name, the subscriber, and then the message that was sent in the broadcast. So yeah, that is server-side streaming for gRPC calls and Go. I hope that this video is helpful, and I'll continue to make more.